Okay, I can do this. So to celebrate getting 90 followers on Twitch, thank you everybody, I have promised I would read you a story I wrote back in college. This will be the same as that poetry reading I did a while back, except longer. See, is this front and back? Yes, okay. So the story's about four-ish pages, 1,000 words. I really don't know what to say. I mean, I wrote it, don't expect the best writing, nor the best of reading. Well, here goes. This is entitled Dreamscape of the Apocalypse. A lone scavenger wanders through the deserted city, the silence broken only by his soft footsteps. Around him are the monstrous, glassy buildings of a past world. He saunters along the sand-covered roads under an acrid orange sky. The sun hardly shone through diseased clouds. In front of him lay the remains of another wanderer. The body was stripped bare either by another wanderer, a beast, or the cruel sandstorms that sweep across the lands. Damien crouched down by a skeleton, hoping to find something useful from this unfortunate soul. He set to work digging up the sand with his only friend, a battered shovel. The sand tumbled down, undoing Damien's work. This world wanted to keep its treasures. Greedy wasteland, it makes a thief of me, he muttered with a half-smile. A black spot caught his eye. The corpse held something. Damien pulled a small cloth pouch from the skeleton's hand. The sandstorms had eaten away at the cloth, and it had some weight to it. Something was inside. He dumped the contents out into his hand, brushed away the sand, and found a small dark blue marble, covered in dull silver spots. Nothing useful. Damien groaned as he stood up and looked down at the broken skeleton. He always found the skeletal remains of his fellow man, but rarely would he ever encounter another human. He knew lots of people from his village. His home. The mere thought of his village brought a twinge of pain in his heart. He missed his home. The plague had forced him from its safe walls, and by capable lookouts who kept a watchful eye over the horizon. While he worked with his family and friends to ensure the village's survival, tending to the crops and repairing buildings. He loved them. He loved his home. A caustic plague descended upon the town. Bang cries of the infected could be heard from all around. Many volunteered to venture out and find a cure. Damien was one of them. He wandered for days, months, maybe years. After endless and aimless searching, he returned home, defeated. When Damien arrived, the village was empty and unusually silent. Everyone he knew was gone. All that remained were the houses, the bones of his past life. There was no changing the past. He continued his aimless trek through the city. Despite his efforts, he could not stop thinking about it, both his own and before his time. He wondered what would have happened had he chosen to stay. Would he have perished in the plague or fled the village in hopes of finding a new home? There's no telling what would have happened. In truth, it didn't matter. But what of those that came before him? He was awestruck the first time he saw the massive buildings that reached toward the sky, gleaming against it. If someone built these structures, it would have been impossible for anyone to do so in these conditions. The tallest buildings he had seen were only 3 floors. Was the world always like this? There are rumors something had caused the land to change, but nobody knew for sure, or questions without an answer. His thoughts were broken when he spotted an abandoned car in the distance. Its dull white metal stood out amidst the pale orange fog. Maybe he could find something useful. Never hurts to look. Damien approached carefully and noticed a dark crimson web, which resembled veins in his hand, had spread up the side of the car and through the broken windows. Inside, the web had covered the car's interior, and in the back there was a large unmoving mass where the webbing seemed to grow from. On closer inspection, the mass had a humanoid figure, lying down in the back seat, huddled in a fetal position. Damien hesitated a moment. They gently prodded the figure with a shovel. It let out a weak murmur, but it was not one of fear, pain, anger, or surprise. It was one of sorrow, as though the figure were begging for help that had come far too late. Another unfortunate victim to the hazards of this world. The world stood still for a single uncanny moment, where Damien backed away from the car. Clearly, there was no good that could come from this. That morning, the wind started to howl through the deserted city, and Damien felt a needle-like pain run up his body and noticed blood was starting to drip from his arm. Another sandstorm was approaching. Quickly, he covered his face with a rag, and made a dash for the nearest building. The adrenaline helped to dull the stinging pain. He rushed forward, crashing through a broken window, sending glass shards everywhere and himself tumbling to the floor. Safety. He let out a deep sigh of relief and staggered onto his feet. Outside, he saw the crimson web being shredded by the storm. Leaving was not an option. Damien turned to explore the building. There was sand, trash, chairs, and desks strewn about the floor. On the walls were faded pictures of green landscapes with blue skies and portraits of people smiling. Damien wandered from room to room. What sort of place was this? He dug through the cabinets, cupboards, desks, boxes, and anything he could pry open in hopes of finding something. For his troubles, he found old papers, writing tools, electronics, and spoiled food. Scavenging for scraps could not sustain him for long. He wished he was back in his village. He wanted a home. The sandstorm was still raging outside. This one would last longer than the others Damien had been through. Nothing to do but wait it out. No sense standing around, he grumbled, searching for a way up. Maybe he could find something useful. At last he found the stairwell and began his ascent to the top, stopping only to scour every other floor. He felt as though there had to be something useful in this building. Onward he climbed in the hopes of looting anything of worth. The stairs seemed to have no end, but despite the exhausted march, Damien kept moving. After a quick look around another floor, he sat down to rest in front of a scratched window. There wasn't much to see aside from the raging sandstorm. The world outside was a dark and violet orange. His rest was interrupted when he heard a metal cabinet crash to the floor. He quickly stood up and looked around. Maybe it was another scavenger, albeit a clumsy one. He would welcome another human face, even though it wasn't the friendliest one. Unsurprisingly, it wasn't a scavenger, but a creature that looked like a man walking on all fours. It had long, sickly-looking limbs with stretched-out fingers, and its torso was covered in matted black fur. Strangely, its head was completely wrapped in dirty bandages with a massive bloody stain on its face. The creature groped about the room with its hands, blind to the world. Damien watched it for a moment and wondered how something so helpless could survive. The creature wasn't a threat. It seemed more dangerous to itself than anything. Damien watched it bumble around a little longer. It was amusing to watch it fumble around, until it found a rat. The rat tried to flee, but was snatched up by the strange beast and torn in half. The beast shoved its prey into its chest, and Damien could hear a nauseating crunch. Time to keep climbing. At long last, Damien had reached the roof of the building and saw something he never thought existed. Above him, the sky was a dark blue, and had many silver spots covering it. The marble he had found earlier. He had heard there were things above the clouds, but never believed the claims. For all his life, the dreadful orange clouds hung overhead, but now he felt a sense of wonder. Damien stood there awestruck, looking at the sky and observing how the dots blinked, moved, and how some were different colors and others were brighter. He didn't know what to make of it. This was above the clouds, the same clouds that had shrouded the world he knew. This is what was hiding. Damien followed the stars down to the horizon and noticed several bright lights off in the distance. A village. Perhaps a new home, something he wanted ever since that fateful day. It was far off in the distance, but where else could he go? He wanted a home, and he was going to find a home. He could feel himself growing tired. His fatigue had caught up with him. Under the night sky, Damien collapsed on the ground, continuing to marvel at the dots in the sky. Come daybreak, he would set out for the village, and maybe his new home. End. Okay, that... admittedly not the best reading I've done. I still need to work on that, especially if I ever do the 10-page one. But yeah, that was about 1,000 words, written in 2018. If you know the inspirations behind it, comment below. If not, I'm just going to tell you. At the time, I really liked, still do, Zdzislaw Beksinski's work. That's where a lot of the imagery, that's where I drew a lot of the imagery from. Especially the creature that appears. That's ripped straight out of one of his paintings. Yeah, I'm not used to doing that sort of reading stuff. Or reading in general. I hope it was at least somewhat interesting for you. And that actually didn't take as long as I thought it would. Well, I guess I'll go back into today's main feature. Well, I guess we'll boot up Hollow Knight. Yeah, I'm not really good at transitioning between segments yet. More because I'm just used to doing one thing for like 3 or so hours. Thank you for listening to that, and thank you for 90 followers.